Welcome to the Good Divorce Show, where we can help you learn how to navigate the journey of divorce with less conflict, less debt, and equip you not to just get divorced, but also learn how to be divorced. Your host, certified divorce coach Karen McNenny, shares her wealth of knowledge, gets advice from other relationship experts, and interviews couples who learn how to have a good divorce, so you can too. Now here's your host, Karen.
Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Good Divorce Show. And I am celebrating your commitment to learn more, to become educated and take time for yourself as you navigate what often is a very challenging journey. I am so delighted to bring Michael Flores to the show today. He is a licensed professional counselor supervisor and the founder of Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling, which he started all the way back at 2012. So this is not his first rodeo. He has spent over 12 years working closely with families going through divorce, especially those stuck in high conflict situations. He is often appointed by the courts to help with reunification therapy, co-parenting support, and family counseling. And with more than 14,000 hours of direct work with families of divorce, he's seen just about everything. And the thought of that just wears me right out. He is also a husband of 18 years, proud dad of 3, so he understands the professional and the personal side of family life. Michael has a unique way of finding the strengths in people and reestablishing hope for families and individuals seeking a preferred future. What makes him stand out is his ability to bring calm to chaos and help families move toward a healthier, more connected future, even when things feel impossible. He's become a trusted expert for courts across Texas, and now he's on a mission to reach families around the world through upcoming trainings and resources. Michael is here today on the Good Divorce Show to share his insights, stories, and practical advice to help families heal even in the toughest circumstances. Welcome to the show, Michael Flores of Brighter Possibilities.
Well, thank you, Karen. I couldn't have said that any better. If you hadn't introduced myself, I don't know if I would have said it all that way. So I'm so glad that you were able to get that information out there. Yes, it's when I hear those numbers, I don't know if I should cringe or be excited, but that's a lot of hours.
You have endurance.
Well,
I'm going to dive right into the deep end with you because I want to get to the juicy stuff.
Okay.
And before we even met today, I had sent some questions. And one of them was, in your opinion, what does a good divorce sound like? What does it look like? And I am first going to read your response and then let you expand on it because it's so beautifully written. I'm going to get a little verklempt. In your own words, Michael Flores, a great transition through divorce is one where you are recreated into the best version of yourself by the insight you gain becoming a more authentic and genuine person where your values, morals, and faith align harmoniously. Oh, you can hear it in my voice. That just fills my heart. How? How do you do such a thing? And can you unpack that sentiment a little bit more and why that's the guiding light in the work that you do with divorced families?
You know, the question of how do I do that? It's the permission that I get from the client to allow me to take them on a journey to get there. I've been blessed with getting to work with people who allow themselves to be vulnerable when being vulnerable is scary. That's where really I get the greatest benefit is watching that change happen. And I get to be part of the journey with them. How I do it is I have to stay cognizant and hopeful that there is a place that exists where that can happen for them. And when I believe in that, and they know that I believe in that, and I'm secure in that, they trust me and they trust that I can take them there. And so the questions that I use, the specific strategies that are done in helping people get to a place like that is really how it's probably my secret sauce. But in reality, it's what they allow me to do. And so the benefit and the grace of that transition comes from the client allowing me to take them there. And I love them for it, and I appreciate them for it as I go on that journey with them in the hardest part of their transition, probably in their life in a long time.
Oh, yes. We underestimate the impact that divorce has on individuals and families.
We do.
And as it's become maybe more normalized, then our approach to it also has been, oh yeah, another divorce, there's that thing. And again, we understate what's happening for that family. I know that you have watched this sort of alchemical transformation of people,
Yes.
including a client who was able to forgive, who stepped forward in the spirit to understand rather than to just be understood, right? We say, do you want to be right or do you want to make it right? Because you're going to have to choose. So, would you unpack an illustrative story around that idea and those individuals that you've seen who have been able to change even how they think and respond to their former spouse?
100%. I would love to share a story regarding that. And so the family, when they first came in, they were extremely litigious, but more than anything, they were terrified, terrified to trust the process. They were court ordered, and so when they're court ordered, they already have a level of skepticism built into it, because they're kind of wondering, like, why would the court want us to work with you directly? And I had a hard time with that question, because I know that they're already looking at me as if I'm part of the system. I'm part of the courts and the attorneys and I know a lot of the attorneys. I know the courts. I mean, I've worked with the judges. The judges have appointed us in many years, but that doesn't mean that I'm part of them. And I have to, like, how do I tell them? And I had to tell this one family. I said, we're just really good. It sounds bad, but that's why you're here.
Yeah.
But I'm only going to be as great as you allow me to be. And so what I remember doing with working with this particular family is I was letting them not like me. I was letting them not be okay with, almost like, I'm okay with the no, I don't like this, or I don't want to be here. And so in particular, this forgiveness with this one particular family that you're asking about, it was a gentleman I was working with. It was an individual guy, and he'd come in and he sat down with me, and he was so bitter. And he just had so much resentment. And what it really was pain. And it was pain and hurt within himself. And he was projecting it outward because he felt that no matter who he talked to, in the multitude of individuals he's talked to, whether it be attorneys, caseworkers, there was a parent facilitator, I think, involved at one point. And so he had just been like, man, I've been through the ringer and I'm getting slammed every direction. And I think the change for him is when I looked at him and I was able to sit in his pain with him.
Mm.
And I was able to sit there and say, what is it that people don't understand that you wish they could? And asking them questions like that, like wanting the opportunity to really see them for where they are and what they've been through. And as he started to discuss that with me, I started to find these little things we call exceptions, or unique outcomes, as you may call them, depending on how you're trained. But these exceptions came up where he was telling stories about the father that he loves to be and the father that he was being prevented from being. And I remember looking at him and I said, if the way you describe you being a father, it sounds like to me that you were your children's hero at one point. And then his eyes well up with tears. And he said, yeah. And I said, how did you do that? And he started to describe that to me. And as we started working through that, I asked him, what's the thing that he's holding on to that's preventing him from being that father again? And that's when he realized that he was resenting his ex. And his resentment for his ex was preventing him from being the father he wanted his children to experience.
Mm.
And as a result of that, he shifted gears. I got to actually hear him testify in court. So they went to the final trial, and I was subpoenaed to be there as a witness of the work that I had done with him. And when it was his turn to come up and testify, the warmness that was presented, the way he presented himself, was so different. Even the judge could tell. The judge's face was like, who's this guy talking today? She's heard him talk before. And you could see the genuineness come out of him. It was so authentic, the way that he approached his testimony, especially when they were trying to get him. Well, didn't you say in the past how horrible your wife was and she was alienating your children and all those wonderful words we hear all the time? And he just looks directly at him and said, yeah, I said a lot of those things. And they said, well, how could you come up here and say something completely different today? And he just looks and says, because then I was angry and I was bitter. I was in a very different place emotionally when I was up here before. And I've worked through that. And I've realized that I was creating and facilitating some of those issues by the way that I was responding to them. And I'm sitting there in the back like, wow.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Oh,
so
we just
yeah,
pray for that for all of you listeners to just set down the anger and the bitter. Right? I was one of those ex-wives for a period of time. Like, you kind of got to go through the angry stage and I was hiking with a friend and she looked at me and she said, good heavens, Karen, it just sounds like every day you're taking the poison and hoping he's the one that dies. Just stop it.
Stop. Yeah,
Just stop it.
the one I heard that I loved is anger is the emotional punishment you give yourself for someone else's behavior.
Ooh. Okay. Give us that one again, Michael. I'm writing that one down.
I didn't come up with it, but I don't even know who said it, the guy that said it, but I loved it. It said, anger is the emotional punishment you give yourself for someone else's behavior.
Yeah. But it is hard to push through that. And what I hear is in your practice, it's really witnessing. Like, yes, there's anger and there's hurt and there's pain and grief. And sometimes just having a witness allows you to set it aside.
It
I
does.
want to dive a little deeper. We are chatting. It just so happens in the month of June, not by accident, actually, because I'm really trying to highlight the father's journey this month. We're in Father's Day season.
That's right.
And it's been my impression and thought that, obviously, the experience of men and women, we've got a lot of, families out there that are same gendered. We've got gender fluidity, but I'm just going to go back into this traditional story of dads and when divorce began, what that meant for dads, what it means now, and would like you to unpack a little bit of what is the unique journey that fathers find themselves in the divorce experience.
Yeah. The unique journey is that fathers feel forgotten a lot of times in the experience of divorce. A lot of them.
Immediately, my heart just goes in my throat. I have
Yeah.
such a heart for dads, and kids need both, right? It's your
There's a reason it
children's
takes
right
two. Yes.
to
There's a reason
have.
it takes two of us to have kids. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So continue. Our
Yes.
forgotten fathers. How did that come about? Why?
Well, I think our system, as much as I I get clientele because the system sends them to us so we can help them and heal. But the system itself is not set up to help families do a divorce. I think you call it an elegant exit. They're not set up to do that very well. And so the system does that to them a lot of times. And a lot of times they go into it with already preconceived notions that mothers will get the kids and the fathers will continue to support them. And so a lot of fathers come in, feel forgotten, and they feel like they're a bank account. They feel like the only thing they have is resources. And that's what they do. They just become a resource.
The ATM.
The ATM. I mean, there was an old, not to quote any songs, goodness gracious, but there was an old rap song or something, R&B song where they talk about it. She's got you for 18 years, something like, I don't know, it was a Kanye song, who sang it, but I don't remember. I don't listen to that kind of music. But I remember hearing that when I was younger and thinking to myself, that's literally the belief in the system, is that that's what a man is, right? So if a man gets divorced, you will be forgotten as a father and you will be an ATM. And I think they walk in to this process with that preconceived idea, not realizing the power that they have as being fathers. One of the things I actually heard, interesting enough, is in the Catholic religion, they call the priest father. And the reason they did that, from what I've heard, was because a lot of these priests were the only semblance of a man for the children in their life. And so since kids were growing up without fathers, this is how they were replaced, as they would go to the church and the priest, and they would call the priest father. And so that stuck, and it never changed, is what I was told. And so it just goes to show the power of what a father can bring into a family system, and fathers forget that. So I think that's the key, is this is how they feel, but they forget how powerful they really are into the family system and for their children.
And I have friends in my generation. I'm in my 50s. So when we were all kids in the 80s, a lot of latchkey kids,
Oh yeah.
Divorces were happening more frequently. And I think often dads were just handed Wednesday nights and every other weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the norm. And I hear these adult children now, and I've had some of them on the show, talk about how they felt so cheated in
Yeah.
their relationship that they were trying to build with their father.
Yes.
And so we're going to go down the nerdy world of Michael
Do
Flores, of, these attachments.
Yes.
And I love talking about attachment theory because I think it gets all jumbled up in divorce. And when we're detaching our two parents and how attachment can be affected with kids and the importance of attaching and at different ages. And so
Right.
would you just go down the nerdy pipeline around attachment? And again, this emphasis of why it's so important that the opportunity to continue that relationship with father is important when we look at the echo of the adult who came through that divorce experience.
100%. I think the thing that people forget in attachment is that attachment happens at a very young age because kids are developing trust, right? They're learning when they cry, you tended to them. And so they're trusting that they'll be tended to. When kids are born, like in the hospital, they do the skin to skin thing where they put the baby on the parent, on the mom, but the child knows the voice of the father. It's really amazing. The kid can light up. What I think people forget, or fathers may forget, is when you're raising your children, and I want parents to hear this, is when you're raising your children, what fathers actually create a lot of times in their kids is that's where their confidence comes from.
Mm.
That's when their ability to like learn certain ways of becoming stronger people and individuals and becoming strong-willed. A lot of it is how the fathers were treating them. I think there was a study done that found that 70 or 75% of females that are in prison had one common denominator, which was absent dads.
Mm.
And they think that number may be the same or higher for men. And
Yes.
so it just goes to show the impact that fathers can really have in the livelihood of children. And so I think the kids are cheated when dads don't have the ability to be in the children's lives as often as possible. And this attachment you're talking about is more about how they're able to relate to one another. Because there's an old saying that said that children believe that mother's love's unconditional because that's the one who birthed them and brought them into the world. And they believe that father's love is conditional. So kids somehow subconsciously believe they have to earn a father's love, if that makes any sense.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
my son right now, if he makes a bad grade or does wrong, right, whatever, and mom hears about it, he doesn't worry as concerned as much as if I come home and I find out he's not doing as well in school. He's more concerned about how's dad going to respond versus how's mom going to respond. And I think that goes back to, I want to make dad proud. So wanting to make one of your parents proud typically comes from the father. And I believe that I don't know why it's built that way. I think we're all kind of, built in that form. However, I think attaching good, healthy attachments to your dads has a huge impact on a child's ability to grow into the world, become independent, successful, and developing confidence is a
Mm.
huge common denominator for good, healthy attachments for
Mhm.
children with their dads. So I'm glad you asked that question. I think a lot of people forget about how important that attachment really is.
Yes. And I know for women that I've interviewed, that relationship with their dad, if
Yes.
they are continuing, a heterosexual life in which they're choosing to attach to men, what happened in their childhood and that relationship with father is going to echo in all
Yes.
of our childhood, is going to echo through our adult life. And a woman who came on the show and she's like, I'm 48 and I'm still trying to figure out, right, those wounds of my childhood divorce, and that I only had Wednesday nights and weekends with my father, and now I'm reattaching in my spousal relationship, and absolutely there's a shadow there. uh,
Yes.
so another piece of the story that I think comes up for dads, because our society is so gendered focused, that moms are doing the potty training, moms put the diaper bag together, moms are getting the cupcakes for school, moms
Yeah.
right, we are a very home focused society, that moms have all those skills and dads are off earning money and being the provider. And now you're in two homes and your job description changes. And I hear a lot of moms who are like, the kids just need to spend most of the time with me. He doesn't know how to do any of those things. He's never cared about
Mhm.
making the birthday special. And are so quick to dismiss.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the street, well, mom, maybe you haven't been great at knowing how to pay all the bills and understand finances. And we we each take on a job description when we're in an intact household, and then that job description changes because now we're a solo parent, and dads have some catching up to do, and we're quick to, let's empower moms and get them financially stable, but we're really dismissive of dads around these kind of parental skills. And I'm wondering how you've run into that and what you might say to our fabulous dads that are listening in.
Yeah. Well, I tell them you have to create a new normal. And most dads just want the opportunity to show that they can handle those kinds of situations, whether it's packing a lunch or going to grocery shopping or whatever else.
Right.
And those parents, those moms that come in and say, well, he's never done that, I always did that, always. The question then is, how is he going to learn? I think the answer is right there. It's in the question. He's going to have to do it. And it's the idea of what I love asking moms that are that involved is, if for some reason dad failed to meet the need that the child had, where are you going to be? And they're always there. Oh, I'm always here. I'm always picking up a piece, but I shouldn't have to do that. And I said, well, I'm not asking what you have to do. I'm just saying, if the child has a need and it goes unfulfilled, what will you typically do? Well, I'll take care of it. Okay. So now we have a path, right? So the child's not going to go without what they need. They may go without what you want them to want or have, but they won't go without their need, because you're going to help with that. In the same token, it gives dad the opportunity to step up and do the things that are necessary to create what we call the new normal. And the new normal is, we have 2 homes and we both share the responsibility. The biggest issue that I run into isn't the packing of the lunch. It isn't all those things. It's really the schedule. It's more of the, I don't know when his baseball games are. And they're like, well, you can go online and find it just like I can, like what mom will say. Or dad will say, I don't really talk to the coach, or it's vice versa. Dad's always talking to the coach and mom's not getting the schedule. And so scheduling issues seem to come up more as an issue with parents that I've found. It's not the making the lunch and getting them to school and those day-to-day things. It's the extracurriculars that seem to come up a lot with parents that are trying to navigate a divorce and co-parenting relationship to help their kid. That comes up more frequently.
And then within ourselves, finding the grace and patience to recognize there's going to be a learning curve.
100%.
It's going to be imperfect. We all are imperfect. We talk about good enough parenting is good enough. And if they have Fruit Loops 3 days in a row, they're not in mortal danger. You might not like it, but again, when we bring all of that emotion of bitter and resentment and holding, and all he ever does is feed him Fruit Loops and he's always late to the games and he could
Yeah.
help
It's that
your
old saying, the comparison is the thief of joy. And so if you're going to compare your home to your dad's home or dad's home to your home, you're always going to find what's not happening. We don't usually compare ourselves to things that are better. We do it as worse. Right. So it doesn't ever go well. Like, there's no comparison. You don't want dad to be a super mom, because if dad was being super mom, then what do we need you for? And we don't want mom to be super dad. If that was the case, what do we need dad for? So it's not meant to be that way. You were both meant to be a part of the child's life, because the two of you had to come together to get the one. And so, or the multiples if you had twins. But the idea is that you were required to love each other in a very intimate way to create life that you created. And so you're both necessary for the child in some form. Now, things can happen. I mean, I've had situations where parents have passed away suddenly. I've gotten a phone. I had a session one week. I get a call the next week that one parent tragically died. And heavens. Those are hard. And so I've had that. And so then it's about, how do we transition into that? And there's a really unique way. I mean, we can be single parents and raise kids and do a great job, but there's always that little piece missing. Kids always grow up wondering what life might have looked like had the other piece been intact with them. And so I think that's the thing I've learned with the adult kids that I've gotten to see later, is they don't come in feeling cheated. They come in wondering what could have been, if that makes any sense. And so they don't say they were cheated. They kind of like, well, I had no choice. I had to deal with it. But I wonder what it could have been had X occurred, And so we get that a lot with kids that come back for therapy as adults. Yeah.
We are going to continue our conversation with Michael Flores. He is a licensed professional counselor in Texas and the founder of Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. And when we get back, we're going to dive into the heartbreak of alienation. Let's talk a little bit about triangulation and parentification. Yes. So a whole mouthful. Stay with us.
Are you thinking about getting divorced? Before you call a lawyer, call the Good Divorce Coach, Karen McNenny, a certified divorce counselor, co-parenting specialist, and mediator. Karen's signature Good Divorce experience will guide you through your divorce journey, from the day you make that difficult decision to the day the decree is signed, all for a predictable fee. The Good Divorce Coach will teach you and your partner how to get divorced and be divorced with less conflict and less debt. Visit thegooddivorcecoach.com to get in touch with Karen.
Now, back to the show with Karen.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with me today. I am chatting with Michael Flores, licensed professional counselor supervisor and founder of Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. He has spent over 14,000 hours of direct work with families in divorce, so he's got a few things to say. Welcome back, Michael.
Well, thank you. Thank you again for having me, Karen.
We were having a rich conversation about the value of moms and dads and the role, the job description changing and really giving each other grace. But there are bad habits that can come in this journey, such
Yes.
as the shuns, as you said, the Asians,
Asians.
the alienation, the parentification, the triangulation. So let's just take those three and dive into your nerdy brain, which I just love giving our listeners language and knowledge so they can kind of name what's going on and then try to sidestep it. Where would you like to begin?
Well, I'll first just let the listeners know if they want to learn more about that specifically. I created a free video on YouTube at Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling, and it is the Asian series. So you'll see triangulation, parentification, alienation, how they all kind of work together, how they come in. It's not a good thing in most cases. So it's really kind of things that are happening systemically that can be detrimental. But I think educating people on it and saying, hey, look, don't find yourself here. This is ways that we're in, and these are ways to get out of creating some of those not so good family system dynamics. And so we can start with triangulation because it's the most common and it's what comes up the most of the time. So this is the typical, when you hear the word children in the middle, what you're really describing is some type of triangulated process. And so I'll actually kind of a fun deal to do. It's easier if I draw it. I'm just going to draw a triangle on my piece of paper here and see if I can show the listeners kind of what that is.
Well, and this is great. We're gonna get the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, there you go.
High level to tempt you to go back into YouTube.
That's right. So that's the triangle. And so I show a gap here at the bottom between the mom and the dad. So we have mom on one side, dad, and a kid on the top. I'm sorry, it's such a scribble. But a triangle is basically the kid has a relationship with dad, kid has a relationship with mom, and then there's an issue here between that relationship that's severed from that divorce. And so what happens is that kid becomes that person that goes back and forth between the parents as such, and is caught in the middle trying to fulfill what that hole is. Does that make sense? And that is an example of triangulating. And so what happens is we triangulate kids all the time unintentionally. And parents will triangulate their kids by saying, hey, when you see your dad, let them know X, Y, Z. When it's something that, it's like really the parents should be talking about. We had a case recently where we were told that the kids went on a vacation with the dad, and the mom was texting the kids while they're on vacation with the dad, but saying things like, hey, your dad and I didn't agree on this camp thing that y'all wanted to go to. And so we're still trying to navigate that and figure it out. I think mom is intentionally trying to say to the kids, like, hey, we're trying to get the camp thing figured out, but we haven't figured it out yet. However, she's just telling the kids about the problem that still exists between the parents. And so the kids are on a trip with dad. So I can only imagine the kids going to dad and going, why are you and mom not figuring out our camp deal? We really want to go on this camp. And so now they're right in the middle.
It's terrible. It's just terrible. And again, I think sometimes it's unconscious. Like, hey, I drove by your dad's house the other day. Who's the red truck?
All the time. And that's a triangle, right?
We actually gave our children a phrase. They probably gave it to us, actually, which is if we inadvertently ask one of those questions, what we get in response is, sounds like a good question for dad.
That's perfect. That's
They
exactly
just
what we train them. Yep.
push it right back off. I'm like, you're right. Totally. You need to know. So they can see it and understand it.
Exactly. And there's two things I tell kids. When I readjust the system and I have the parents in the room with the kids, and this might be the first time the kid has ever seen his parents in the room in years. Because I've had it before that way. And I'll say very clearly is I look at the kid and I say, you get an opinion, not a decision. You get a voice, not a choice. And I said, so that goes back to your parents. Decisions and choices are your parents. And when they can't agree, they have someone they can talk to that helps them learn how to work through whatever agreements they don't make. And I said, do you know who that is? And they always say it right. The kids always goes, the judge. It's really interesting how they know that, right? They know systemically how it's playing out. Mm-hmm. So what I do is when you're ever asked a question by your parents that you feel is really a parental thing, you give it right back to them. You say, it sounds like something you and mom and dad need to talk about, or something you and dad need to talk about. Mm-hmm. Or you can even say, I don't have an opinion about that. So if one of your parents says, hey, where do you want to live? I don't have
Oh,
an opinion about that. The kid has permission to not have to answer a
that's right.
question where they feel they're in the middle, right? And so I did that without, so I did that with a dad and a child, and mom wasn't present. I get an email from mom, and she is livid. She's so mad at
Oh
me.
dear.
She picks him up from the house, and she always asks him, "How did you go at your dad's?" Probably a fair question. Kid says, "Fine." You know how kids are. Fine. And they said, "Well, did your dad do," and all these things that dad does wrong, that mom feels dad does wrong. Did your dad do X? Did your dad do X? Whatever it was.
Oh,
And so the kid told me it bothered him, and he didn't know how to respond to his mom. He knew his mom would get upset if he didn't answer. And I said, "Well, you get to blame me now. So you get to say to mom, I don't have an opinion about that. Or, it sounds like something you and dad need to talk about. Whatever you want to say to that, perfectly fine for me." So that's exactly what he does. So when she asked him, "Who told you to say that to me?" Because she knew it was a whole new thing. She thought dad had said that to him. He said it was
mm,
me. I get the email. So I see the email and I said, "Thank you so much for reaching out to me. I would love for you to come to the next session so we can go over this together with your child." And so sure enough, she came in and we went over all this together, and she realized very quickly that she was putting the child directly in the middle of a situation that the kid didn't
mm.
deserve. I think I had 2 more sessions after that. Never saw that family again. Didn't have to. The triangulation had ended, and so it kind of stopped all the next steps of what could have happened, which would be parentification. And so let's get into that if
Okay,
that's
let's
okay.
get into that one.
So parentification is where the child takes on the role of parent. So this is the child parenting the parent. And there's 2 ways it happens. It is either emotional or it can be physical. So you have the emotional side of parentification, which is more common. And then you have the physical side. So this would be like the dad and mom divorce, and dad was responsible. Let's say financially, he helped the home the most. So the kid goes and gets a job, right? This is the physical side. He goes and gets a job so he can help pay the bills, help mom pay bills at the house. And so that kid is taking on a physical role as a parent, right, to handle the household needs. The
Mhm.
emotional side would be, I saw this too, actually saw this in a real case where the child was taking food to the closet. So the kid would go cook the meal, which is the physical side of parentification, but he was taking it to the closet because mom was in there crying because they're getting divorced. And so he was
Oh,
serving mom food in the closet
oh dear.
to help her work through her emotional impact. And
Mm.
so when she would cry, he would defend her, right? So anytime she would cry, he'd get real defensive. If I brought mom up in the session, he would get defensive toward me. And so anytime I brought mom up, he was like, "It's not my mom. It's not her." And I would just look at him and say, "I'm really impressed how defensive you are of your mom. Help me understand that more." And that's when I learned that he had been emotionally parentified originally, and then he kind of moved into the physical side. But he was taking care of the parents' emotions, kind of the guardian of their emotional
Mm.
setting. Most people that will come report this to me will say alienation, but they're really describing parentification. Because when I say, "What do you mean?" and they start describing it, they actually describe parentification. And so parentification is more common. Some
Yeah.
people say it's a style of alienation. I don't know if I can agree with that wholly, but I mean, if it's done with intent, I believe alienation is an intentional act more than not unintentional. More likely that parentification is what's happening. And so
Yeah.
that's what I tell. That's what I tell a lot of our people is training them on knowing the difference between this helps them understand how to navigate it better. Because if you think it's intentional, you're going to respond in a defensive way, which is
Yeah.
probably going to create more of that problem. So we used to have this term that says, "Don't load the gun just because you complain they fire." Because they'll say,
Say
"See,
that again.
don't load the gun when you complain that they fire," because what's happening is the parents will come in complaining about what the other parent's doing, but not realizing that they're loading the gun because of the way they're responding to it, right?
Yeah.
And so they're actually contributing to the thing they don't want to have happen.
Mhm.
And so both parents are becoming reactive and not responsive to the issues, which then who does that fall on every time? Falls on the children.
Mm.
So that's
Well,
parentification.
yeah, let's go down the alienation road real
Yes.
quick, so we can kind of understand the contrast in that and the dangers of alienation for the kids and their relationship with their parents.
Yes. Thank you for asking about alienation because that's the big one. We're creating a program to help people learn how to counter alienation when it happens. So I actually have a digital program that people can purchase that will come out soon. So stay in tune. We're still filming it. However, it'll be a way to counter alienation when it is occurring because it seems to happen pretty frequently, especially if people are in a litigation matter. And so alienation typically has the role of a direct impact. It's really putting the hate into the child so that they can hate the other parent in some form. And so these parents will come in, and what they'll do is they'll take their burdens and their hurt and their pain, and they'll project it into the child so that the child will feel the same way toward the parent. And so it is a way to get the child to reject the other parent.
Mhm.
And the direct form of that is saying things like to your kids, your other parent is such a jerk or did you know that they cheated on me and that's the reason we got divorced because they'd rather be with their poor mistress or something horrible in that nature. But they'll
Yep.
say things to the children like that. And so the children then feels the need to reject that parent so they can accept the other one. Kids are not naturally feeling the need to pick between their two parents, just so you know. That's not a
Yeah,
natural.
that's not a thing that we arrive with. Mostly it's like the love is the love is the love is the love
It's experience,
until
right?
there's this other influence. And what are the long-term repercussions and damage to a child who has been in that position, has had a rejecting relationship, which
Mhm.
again, 18 years is only like a quarter of this person's life.
Right.
It's a really important foundation, and we can screw up the other 60 years real
Yes.
quick.
So I think there's two things that happen. When you alienate a child from a parent, that child can develop a victimhood mentality when they grow up. So even when they're
Oh,
rejected by another person, they'll just hate on them because that's what they were taught by you, is that you just hate on people who you feel hurt you. And so the kid will do that. And they're always victimized by everyone. So if the relationship breaks down, it's never because of them, right? So they get a false sense of how to relate or connect. And
ooh.
they struggle with delving into deep relationships. So that's one that affects the child. The other impact on the child when the child's been alienated is the alienator is typically hated by the alienated child. So as that child grows up and
Mm.
heals and becomes independent,
Yep.
they hate you for alienating them.
Yeah, they start to see it. They're like, I was manipulated. I was used. I was brainwashed. I drank the Kool-Aid.
Mhm.
You did all this damage to me and my relationship with this other parent. And now
Yep,
gloves are off. I'm doing my own thing. And yeah, I've heard that mantra.
absolutely. And one of the hardest things that people forget to forgive is betrayal. And it goes back to the days of Jesus. I mean, look at the story of Judas, right? And
Yeah.
Jesus being betrayed by Judas and how deep that story runs. Um, and I heard someone say the other day that, we got to remember that, I'm going spiritual here, but it says that we got to remember that Judas didn't really sell Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. What Judas did is Judas really sold himself for 30
Mm,
pieces of silver.
mm.
Because you can't sell a person, right? And so you're selling of yourself. And but he betrayed a person that he supposedly loved. And in a marriage, it feels that way. I think when a marriage breaks down, sometimes even if there's not infidelity, it feels like a betrayal of the love, the building
Absolutely.
blocks of what we wanted to build together. And the
So much
children,
betrayal.
that's right. And the
Yeah.
children end up dealing with the burden of that.
Mhm.
And when all they want to do is just love you both. And
That we're just going to say that again, listeners.
yes,
Kids just want to love you both and be loved by both of you. And your relationship with your spouse is entirely different than what your child gets to create in their relationship with each of you independently. It will not be the same. It should not be the same.
yes. Children are really unique because, um, how do I say this to parents? What I like to say is that children, um, they don't know how not to love you. They
Mhm.
learn how not to love you. And they
Right.
will grow independent of you at some point in their lifetime. And they hope to choose to love you back. And it's going to come from what you showed them. How you loved, how you forgave, how you showed grace to someone else is going to be what they have. I think one of the things I heard that I love most is we all desire mercy until we have to give it.
And the other one I love is grace is to forgive someone who you believe is unforgivable.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's good.
That's hard. We're asking a lot of you walking through this journey. We know that it is a complex, emotional hairball, rat's nest, roller coaster,
Yes.
class 5 rapids, like it. So again, the beauty of what you're offering, Michael, is not only support in your direct work, but also education through these programs, through brighter possibilities that we can learn. And I'm always banging the drum, like, why don't we teach this stuff when we've got kids trapped for 20 years in education? I mean, really, my kids know how to do long division. Nobody taught them how to have a difficult conversation with another human. What do we really need here? Why are we not teaching these principles?
It's the one thing that makes us unique as humans is being able to communicate. And
Yeah.
I think that's the piece that's missing is children learn really poor communication styles when they have divorced parents who don't work together is what happens. They don't know how to communicate that stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love most about working with kids is when they get to come in and they get to experience a different way of communicating, because I show that to them through the questions I ask them or the journey I take them on in a therapeutic intervention. And when they get to see it for the first time or experience it, it's just like, it's magic, and it's a beautiful thing. That's probably why I love doing this. I hate the work because it's so hard, but I love the process of getting people to a new place. I love
Yeah.
that shift. And I think for me, that's the thing that it just lights me up. And watching these kids come on the other side of this deal, watching parents. I mean, when a parent gets to a place of being vulnerable again and loving the person for who they are, not for who they want them to be, it's a really beautiful thing to watch unfold. And then getting to see them be at the wedding with their kids, be at the graduation together, be in a photo together, because it's about their children. It's not about them anymore. It's not about
No.
their marital relationship as much as it's about their parental relationship now, and
But
learning how to put those two things in two different places.
and there are parents who will not get in the same photo together
I know it.
years later, who can't show up on Christmas morning together. It's astonishing to me. And again, I really believe how we begin is how we end. And when we start divorces poorly, we're off course. And if there is not a course correction, you just keep going down the wrong roads.
We become court appointed as part of that realigning that
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
And they don't
Which
like
is the difference between you and me, Michael, is you are working with the hardest of the stories who have come through the fire and it's still smoldering or still hot. And I pick up clients at the starting gate who are like, can we do this in a more friendly, cooperative way? And I'm like, absolutely, hop on board. I don't,
the
I just,
fire has started, but they want what you offer. It was interesting,
yeah,
Karen, because
yeah,
if they all had a choice, they would start where you start, right? But
yeah.
you're right, the fire hit. And what I've learned, and just to help your listeners understand this, the reason I think the fire hits is a couple of things that they're carrying, right? It's that resentment, it's that bitterness, right? That they carry. They just blend it over into the new, right? The divorce is
Mhm.
happening and they blend that in. And then I think
Yeah.
that's the trigger of the fire. And then the thing that maintains it, the thing that kind of keeps feeding it, is the fear and trust, right? They have this constant fear that they carry with them forever, and their inability to trust each other. And that just feeds those flames. And that thing is just, it's taken off. And then we come in, we have to try to water it down somehow. And the way that we know how to do that is go back to, what are your goals? What are you trying to
Mhm.
accomplish? If X never changes, right? So like if your ex-wife never changes the way she approaches this, what difference should you come in with? Are you going to stay the same way too? Or are you going to do something different? Like putting them in a position to take their control back and say, regardless of what they do or don't do, I got to be this version because it's in the best interest of the child. And so that's another term we get thrown around as best interest, but no one ever defines it. So they'll say, this is the best interest. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
So
And a lot of times it's the parent lens, like, well, this is the best for the kids because
right,
it's best for me and I know what's best. Yeah.
that's correct. I think that,
Well,
so I'm sorry, Karen, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say that we have learned that when we come in things very selfishly, that's when we destroy.
mm,
Selflessness is the way we grow together. Selfishness is the way we grow apart.
mm,
So if you want to grow together, you have to get to a place of selflessness, which is very scary because it means people could take advantage of you. And so I will plug this in. It's not mine, but I tell people the greatest gift I've ever found that has helped my personal life when I'm struggling in any capacity in my life, whether it's in work, with family, with kids, in counseling, it doesn't matter, wherever the struggle is. I go back to this poem. It's called Do It Anyway by Mother Teresa. I don't know if you've ever heard of that poem.
bring it on.
Yeah, so Do It Anyway by Mother Teresa. And I will actually not tell you much about it because I want people to look it up. It's really a short read. However, it is one of the most powerful things I have read in a long time. And we actually have it hanging up in our kitchen. We have because they, people make it in,
Yeah.
Etsy or whatever, but we have it in our kitchen on a little deal that's hung up. So every time we walk by the kitchen, it's just right there. It's just a reminder of how we're supposed to approach life. So I would encourage listeners, and I encourage our clients. I actually hand it out to them. I'll print a copy and I'll hand it to them and say, hey, when you're feeling stuck, you're not sure where to go, just read this and hopefully that'll give you some guidance. And
Well, we
it's
will add
so.
all of this to the show notes. And before we sign off with Michael, and I was going to say in a nugget of wisdom, but we've already had 52,000 already. Just such a rich, wonderful discussion. Please, can you reiterate about the YouTube channel and your website and the
Yes.
sources? And I know you're Texas based, but you have opportunities to learn from Michael, even if you're not in Texas. Tell us how to find you.
Yes, so we have some different ways to do that. BrighterPossibilitiesFC.com. Again, Brighter Possibilities, F as in family, C as in counseling.com is our website. On our website, we post everything you're looking for that you're trying to navigate to. But if you want to find us on other platforms, if you're not going through the website, here's some you can do. You can go to YouTube and type in Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. Most of our stuff is in there. You can also go on Instagram, Brighter Possibilities FC. And then on Facebook, it's Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. But if you'll link into those things, you'll follow us, you'll get all the access to the new things. As you said, we can counsel people that are within our state in Texas, that are residents of the state of Texas. Outside of that, for those individuals that still want to learn from us, learn from what we do and how we help, we are going to be offering some digital courses. And 2 of those are going to be coming out pretty soon. One of them is Countering Alienation. And the other one is for step parents. So the step parents that want to learn their role and how they can support the family that they're coming into. That's another great program for them as well. That will be done by Mr. Armando Martinez. So we have some really unique stuff to share with you all. We hope that you'll find us and look for us in those links. Again, brighterpossibilitiesfc.com is our website, and that's a way to stay connected to every single aspect of what we're doing. Karen, thank you for letting me put that out there.
Well, yes, and I already have decided there's going to be a second appearance by Michael on the Good Divorce Show, so we can talk about bonus parents.
Yes.
And the blended family and our role, because that's a whole nother complex. And we're talking about the divorce, but what we hope for all of you listening is that you will find love again, that there will be a better match, that you will learn from the experience coming through divorce, and not rinse and repeat, but that new people and possibly their children as well coming into this complex world of blended families. So watch for Michael to return, and just words of wisdom for people to be thinking about today as we sign off with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Karen. I think what I would tell people is, start with the thing that brings us all together first is love. Lead with love, but loving yourself through things, not taking yourself so serious, realizing that I think people put so much on themselves. They may feel like if their marriage has failed, they're a failure. And that doesn't, that's not what it means. It means that we're transitioning into a new normal, into a better beginning. And so I think that what I would like to leave your listeners with is starting with a place there, starting with, leading with love and finding a way to use grace and forgiveness as a way of building a new building block for yourself and your family. And if you stay centered on those things, I think that'll be the best advocate and the best navigator for you as you go through the transitions that you're going through in a very difficult time in your life that we call divorce.
So beautifully put. Thank you, Michael, reminding all of us that there are brighter possibilities out there. Listeners, thank you so much for taking time in your world to be a student of divorce and to find your brighter possibilities. And I'm here as your good divorce coach to remind you everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Do you have questions or thoughts about this week's episode? Let us know by following the Good Divorce Coach on Facebook and Instagram @Good Divorce Coach, and leave a comment. And be sure to tune in every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific or listen anytime wherever you get your podcasts.